All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillahi wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Allahumma salli wa sallim da'iman abadan ala habibika khair al-khalqi kullimi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So joining us today is Mufti Nabeel of Darul Iftah Mahmoodiya. Mufti Nabeel, and is it Valli or Masters?
We famously known as Masters here. Our official surname is Valli.
Oh, okay. MashaAllah. Jazakallah for taking the time to come speak to us. I really wanted to do this because there's been a lot of queries in terms of rulings, and I think fiqh is something that, after your aqidah, after your belief, that people really have to have a connection with, so that they understand what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from me. So today, inshallah, we're going to go through a few questions, and especially on salah, meaning the most important or one of the most important aspects of ibadah. If you can clarify a few things, let's get going, inshallah. So number one of the main things, or not main things, one thing that a person has asked me recently is that when in jama'ah, when a person is reading salah, what happens if they go faster than the imam?
Okay, from a fiqh point of view, there are a few scenarios that we can look at. One is if a person goes into a posture, say into ruku or in sajda before the imam, and he gets up from that posture before the imam goes into that posture. So basically the entire posture has been carried out before the imam even starts his posture. Then in that case, his posture will not be counted as though it has been performed.
Right.
So if the imam goes in ruku or in sajda, he has to follow the imam again in ruku. So that means he might be making 2 rukus.
Okay.
So
if, say for example, the individual goes into ruku, right? Or let's say sajda, because sajda, the point of the forehead. So a person, their forehead touches the ground before the imam.
Right.
Then they just undo it and redo it again, follow the imam?
Yes.
They can do that.
Or, if he has realized that he has gone into sajda before the imam, then he can wait for the imam to join him.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but if the imam is further back in his arkan, in his postures, then he can join the imam immediately and then follow the imam from there.
Okay, so it doesn't break the salah if a person...
No, it's makruh tahrimi, severely disliked, but it will not break the salah.
Oh, okay.
And then if the imam joins him later on, the karaha still remains, it's still disliked, but his namaz will be valid.
Okay.
There's only an exception to one, and that is the salam. If a person performs his salam before the imam does, then his salah will be valid, though it is still severely disliked, makruh tahrimi. Except in a situation where he has a valid excuse. For example, he is following the imam in salah, and there is, say, an insect that is likely to bite him, sting him, that is coming towards him.
Right.
He has completed his tashahhud and is waiting for the imam now after the durood or the dua.
Right.
Or he might have finished his tashahhud and still be reciting durood and dua.
Right.
And to run from that insect, he performs his salam, or he is pressed to go to the bathroom. Then in such situations, or he needs to save a child or something, those common scenarios where you are allowed to break your salah. If he performs his salam before the imam in those scenarios, then inshallah he will not receive any sin for the karaha. It will not be makruh, and his salah will be fine.
Oh, subhanallah. Okay, excellent. So if there's an extreme situation or a necessity, and the tashahhud is complete, and the follower makes their salam, the salah will still be counted.
That's correct.
Excellent. Okay. Number 2, in terms of making the saf, right, and especially if there's children. Now, say a person has the adults generally should have the initial rows of the saf. Now, what happens in a situation where the saf is not complete and there is a young individual who's not baligh? Can they complete the saf?
If there is one child only,
okay,
then it is better to line him up in the adult saf, preferably on one of the ends where an adult will not be joining. So if there is a single child, that is better to do. If there is more than one child, then they should have their own saf.
Okay.
Now, in this type of situation as well, what we generally see in our masajid, that is not the most correct way of doing it. While we prefer that we don't have any children in our safs. So when we line up at the time of iqamah, the safs that we have, say 2 or 3 safs in the masjid, then we will leave 4 or 5 safs in the back and then line the children up right behind. Whereas the children are supposed to be lined up after the safs of the adults end.
Right. Okay.
So if you have to leave out one saf, knowing that a lot of people generally are late to the salah there, and it will be difficult for them to navigate around the children's saf, the children's rows, and get into. That is fine, but it is still preferable that the saf of the children is right behind the male adults.
Right.
And whoever comes later on joins the saf in front, the male saf, and once that saf is full, then they will join the children's saf.
Right.
Technically, whoever comes late, it's his problem if he has to join the children's saf. But if he has to join the children's saf, there's still no problem.
Okay.
So there is a fine difference between putting a child in the saf at the beginning of salah and coincidentally having a child in the saf during the course of salah. There is a difference between it. The ruling is not the same.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So that is what's preferable.
Right.
And then another scenario to this is in today's time where we have lots of children coming to the masjid.
Right.
And then we have a huge gap between the two sets of sufuf,
Right.
the rows of the adults, the rows of the children.
Right.
We find a lot of noise in the masajid, which disturbs not only the musallis but the imam as well. So we do find in our fiqh kitabs, the later fuqaha have mentioned that it is permissible to put the children in the adult saf as well. Not only when there is one child. Even if there are many children, they can be added to the sufuf of the males, preferably on one side. And we see this all the time in the Haramain where we go and perform our salah. The children are in the main safs. The primary reason behind is if you leave your child somewhere in the back,
Right.
it will be so difficult to look for him, you'll get lost.
Right.
So in those scenarios, fuqaha have permitted your child to be in the saf with you. So if you're standing with your child, it is preferable that you stand towards the end of the saf,
Okay.
if the saf is filling up.
Right.
If it hasn't filled up, then you be the last man, and then you put your child after that. Whoever comes will join your child on the other side.
Right. Okay. Now, interesting. This isn't part of our questions, but I've noticed when people make the saf, sometimes they start the next row without completing the first saf. Is this against the etiquette of?
It is against the etiquette. It is also disliked.
Right.
Because we're leaving out gaps in the sufuf, where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has emphasized so much on filling up the gaps in the sufuf.
Right.
So it doesn't only mean the gaps between two people standing, the slight gap that is left sometimes between shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
It also refers to gaps right from the last man up to the end of the saf.
Okay.
So it is disliked in both situations.
Right. And then if a person has to, has a need, they need to go to the bathroom, and there's an empty spot in front of us. Can we take 2 steps forward and fill that gap?
Yes, that's what's supposed to be done. If the empty space is right in front of you,
Right.
then you take 2 steps. One step where you get both your feet together, and then the next step again into the position where that man has left from.
Okay, excellent. Number 3, this is an interesting one. I haven't seen this so much in other places, but I noticed when people make salam, they go Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then they stop here and they do this and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What's the ruling? Is that part of the ibadah? Is there any basis on that?
Well, the little that I've looked for this masala and researched it, I haven't come across much. There is the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said salah should start from a person looking straight ahead,
Right.
and then he should turn to the right. Further than that, now there is no much discussion that I found in the hadith. There could be, but I haven't researched enough. The fiqh kitabs also mention this masala, not as explicitly that we would want it, but the way they explain it, that you turn to your right, make salam, and then you turn to your left.
Right.
So there is no mention of stopping in between.
The pause.
But Allama Gangohi rahimahullah, in his sharah of Tirmidhi,
Right.
has explained the masala quite clearly, and he says that a person should not stop in between.
Right.
So when you make your salam to your right, from the right shoulder now you start making salam towards the left shoulder.
Right.
What people usually do here, it's become the norm that you make salam to your right, your salam ends there, then you bring your head back to the central position, and then you start your salam from the center going to the left. Whereas Allama Gangohi rahimahullah mentions that your salam should start from the right and end on the left. So
Right.
there is no stopping in between, and salam should not start when you reach the center. It should start from the right whilst you are moving towards the left.
Okay, subhanAllah. Yeah, I also have done a bit of research and consulted a few muftiyun in terms of this particular masala, and nobody has been able to explain that stopping. And now I think some is even becoming overemphasized. It's not just a stop, it's almost like an emphasis, like a head bow.
Yes.
And another one, which is adding an action to an ibadah which is explicitly explained in our deen, right? So jazakallah for that clarification. Number 4, after salah, we know that there's hadith that talks about the acceptance of dua, and but in the case of collective dua, it has become now also the norm that after the salah, the congregation makes a collective dua, and there's some people that have criticized that. So if you can just clarify what's the position in terms of that.
Like you mentioned, there is mention of acceptance of dua after salah, and then other hadith mention the duas of Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam, and Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. So those duas have also been mentioned in the ahadith to be recited after completion of salah in congregation. Now, what we see generally in our masajid, in terms of the collective dua that takes place, many of our ulama, and I will specifically mention of the Deobandi school of thought. Well, it will be a contentious issue if it has to be discussed in our masajid with our aimma, with our ulama, most of who are affiliated with madaris in the Gujarat region of India.
Right.
And many who have studied in Pakistan, in South Africa as well. Well, we saw this in South Africa, that there was emphasis on not making dua in the Darul that we studied in.
Right.
And that also happened later on, not in the earlier years. So if we have to look at our kitabs, then you will find lots of our ulama, great luminaries like Allama Anwar Shah Kashmiri rahimahullah, Allama Yusuf bin Nuri rahimahullah, Mufti Yusuf Ludhianwi rahimahullah, Mufti Shafi rahimahullah, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah, Hakimul Ummah, Maulana Zafar Ahmad Uthmani Thanwi rahimahullah. You will find Allama Abdul Hayy Laknawi rahimahullah, Mufti Taqi Uthmani Damat Barakatuhum, and many other scholars, great scholars of Islam, clearly mention that it is not sunnah to make dua in congregation after salah, no collective dua.
Right.
And many have gone to the extent of calling it an innovation and a bid'ah.
Right.
Because of the emphasis that is laid behind it. We look down upon somebody who does not join the congregation dua.
Correct.
You will see many times somebody walks off immediately after salam, and half the crowd will turn their faces to look at who it is.
Right.
So you do not need to know and think in your heart that it is necessary, but just that action that shows that you see something wrong in that man walking out
Yes.
before salam is a sign and indication that you feel it is necessary, or even highly emphasize that a person be part of the dua.
Right.
So that is something that is an innovation that we look at Yes, you will find the arguments from many of our ulama here locally as well, that we are in times of great need for dua, and our general public does not know how to make dua and what dua to be made,
So
to make.
Ta'lim and
Ta'liman, but that is not the only way of ta'lim.
Right.
You could stand up on a Friday and give a bayan
Sure.
and educate the people on how to make dua.
Right.
You could have a brief session after one of your salahs and educate the people.
Right.
It does not take 50, 60, 70 years multiplied by 5 times congregational salah to educate people on how to make dua.
Right.
And there are a few points that Mufti Shafi Uthmani rahimahullah has mentioned. And because he's a great scholar, that I would quote it. He says that many of our imams will make du'as that our awam, general public, will not understand.
Yes.
So then what is the point of making congregational dua? Let people make dua according to what they need.
100%. Yes.
And the other point is each person has his own needs.
Yes, definitely.
So in the congregational dua, his need will not be catered for. So let people make dua individually.
Right.
And let each one ask for what he needs.
Right.
So mention other points as well.
Right.
But these are what come to mind at the moment.
No, I appreciate that. And like you said, these are points that, look, and people have to understand something, is that we want to get as close as we can to the practice of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we have to resort to those people who have studied these issues in depth, which is why specifically I brought Mufti Saab, who belongs to a Darul Iftah, which is an actual institute that specializing in jurisprudence. And, we should not get emotional about things. Keep it rational. What does the text say? What does Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what was the practice of that? So I appreciate your giving us some insight in that particular one. A common thing, a thing I've seen, number 5, we know women are allowed to place their elbows on the ground, but I'm seeing men placing their elbows on the ground. What is our view on that?
The correct procedure and method of performing sajda is that a person's elbows should be way away from the ground, high above the ground.
Right.
Because it comes in the hadith that when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make sajda, then he used to spread out his arms. And until such a position that if somebody would have to look, he would be able to see the whiteness of his armpits.
Right.
So if the elbows are touching the ground, then this is not possible at all.
Right.
And then looking at the posture itself, with somebody having his elbows touching the ground, and the description of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sajda was such that if a kid, a small goat, had to pass under the abdomen, the belly of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it would be able to do so. So with that much space, it shows how far away from the ground Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's elbows were. Somebody has to touch his elbows on the ground. It's not possible for a kid to pass under the abdomen of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Right. And is there not a hadith that talks about resembling of the dog?
That hadith is there.
Yeah.
Ulama have interpreted that hadith in different ways.
Right.
And one interpretation is this as well, touching of the elbows on the ground.
Okay.
The other interpretation is with regards to how somebody sits in the qaida.
Okay.
So different interpretations where that applies, whether it is for sajda or whether it is for sitting during tashahhud.
Okay. Jazakallah. Appreciate that one. Okay, number 6. We're not even getting into musical ringtones because that is heartbreaking that music and sometimes very inappropriate lyrics play in our masajid. And as a sheikh the other day mentioned, it once played in the haram over the microphone. So that is blatant. There's no need to discuss that. Now, what happens to an individual who comes into the masjid and their phone starts to ring? Because I feel like some people are unaware of what to do, and then it ends up ringing the whole salah. So what are they to do?
Well, the most ideal situation is to leave the phone in your car or at home.
Yes.
If somebody doesn't do that, then as he enters the masjid, he should put it totally on silent, no vibration mode as well.
Right.
Because we know many times the phone starts vibrating, we can hear the vibration 2-3 people down the row as well.
Yes, correct.
So totally on silent. At times we'll find somebody puts his phone on silent, but the alarm clock is ringing, especially Fajr time. If that situation has to happen, that where the phone is ringing, or if it's on vibration, it's vibrating, then the correct action is to silence that ringtone or that vibration using one hand. Some people say that it will disturb the salah, that is why they leave it on, not realizing it's disturbing the salah of the entire masjid.
Right.
So you use one hand to silence the ringing.
Right.
And then you leave it at that.
Okay.
Using two hands will be considered as amal kathir,
No.
an action that is beyond the scope of the actions of salah.
Right.
That will nullify a person's salah.
Right.
Well, if that has to happen, that with one hand he cannot silence the phone, it's just not happening. At times people use such covers on their phones, or it's deep down in a tight pocket.
Right.
It's just not happening. Then he should assess his situation and see whether he's in the first rakat or is in the rakat that he joined and the phone started ringing. How much of disturbance it might be causing the congregation.
Right.
And if he's in such a situation, then perhaps it would be better for him to silence the phone, even if it takes two hands to silence it. Especially if music is playing on.
Yes.
Then he should break his salah, silence the phone, and then rejoin the salah.
Okay.
In the interest of the concentration and devotion of the other musallis.
For sure. Yeah, okay. And I mean, especially like the Imam too, right? It really disturbs the Imam in his recitation. And you know, when you're up there, a lot of people don't realize your nerves are, you know, reacting, plus now you have to contend with a ringtone, and it gets quite distracting. So in summary, keep one hand on, try and just use one free hand to turn it off. If it's really bad, your priority is to shut it off, use both hands, and then restart the salah.
Yes.
Okay. This is a really sad one. I've spoken to a few individuals, especially from the youth, who have mentioned that when they've come to the masjid, they've heard comments like, "Oh, it's must be Eid day that you're here in the masjid," or "Oh, they must be having a problem at home that you're in the masjid," and you know, this is essentially discouraging a person or preventing them from coming to the masjid. What's the Islamic ruling on a person who does that?
Let me start with the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where a Bedouin came to the masjid and he made dua for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah have mercy on me, and may Allah have mercy on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not on anybody else. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "You have restricted something that is very vast and open. You have only asked for mercy for the two of us and left out the rest." Then from there he proceeds to one side of the masjid, and he's a Bedouin coming from the outskirts of Medina Munawwara. He doesn't know the etiquette of the masjid, so he starts urinating there. Sahaba immediately stand up, those that are with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they start rushing towards him. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam stops them, and he says to them, "Innama bu'ithtum muyassirin, walam tub'athu mu'assirin." You have been sent by Allah as people who will make it easy for the public and the community, and not be restrictive and make things difficult. Let him finish. Once he finishes, then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells them, take a bucket of water and pour over that area. So this is how Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam treated somebody who came to the masjid. First, he did not make dua for the others, and rather than making dua, he said, "Do not have mercy on anybody else apart from us." So it was a negative already.
Right.
And then the second point, imagine in our masajid with the carpets that we have somebody urinating and that. So that was the second situation. But the Nabi of Allah still to educate, not only to show mercy and kindness to him, but to educate me and you how we should treat musallis that come to the masjid. Yes, in other rulings, ahadith, we are taught other aspects as well, not to help beggars who are begging in the masjid, to stay away from the masjid if a foul smell is coming from our clothes and our body and our mouths.
Right.
So we are taught that as well. But we have to draw a balance between the two.
Definitely.
As far as entertaining the musallis that come in there. We know the situation of our masajid, how many of our community frequent the masajid for salah.
Yes.
And then when somebody comes in, perhaps that's the first day when he has decided now to become regular with salah.
Yeah.
And you find somebody commenting in that way, and you don't know what's happening. At times you find people staying in your area.
Right.
They're working in other areas, so Zohr, Asr, Maghrib, they are performing salah in their workplaces or they're in those places. By Isha, he might have returned home, or he's performing Isha in another area on his way back. So you might not see him. Fajr time, we know the situation is difficult in terms of how many musallis come to our masajid.
Yes.
And then perhaps you find somebody has just now changed his job. He started working in an area near home.
Right.
He started his salah, and the first day now you discourage him this way, then you'll find he won't be coming back to the masajid.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's very sad actually. We want the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be filled, and the generation to come, if we're discouraging them. And sometimes it takes courage, for a person to muster up. They get intimidated. I've had questions like, am I allowed to read in the first saf? And I'm like, yeah, you're supposed to actually compete for the first saf, right? Forget about being allowed. Like, compete. In fact, if someone says do this, like, take it, so these are things that we should really try and show the love of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
In fact, there are things that comments that people would pass as a joke as well.
Yeah.
That is it Eid or what? Trying to joke with him. But the person coming to the masjid obviously will feel offended.
Right.
It's similar to how we joke with regards to some of our aqidah.
Right.
We joke with regards to divorce and talaq.
Yes.
And the reality is that the outcome actually takes place. So here as well, if somebody is joking in that way, and it puts off the musalli who has come, he feels bad about it.
Right.
Then it would fall under the verse of the Quran that says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ مَنَعَ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ أَنْ يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ. If that man does not come for salah again, then he will fall under the purview of this verse to say, who can be more unjust and oppressive than that man who prevents people from coming to the masajid.
Allahu Akbar.
So we have to be careful with regards to this situation as well.
Yeah.
We do find at times beggars coming to our masajid, and it's on the increase on a weekly basis. In our masjid we will find people from Zohar till Isha.
Right.
It's become more like a business, but we have to put our foot down with regards to it.
Right.
But how we conduct that type of activity of stopping them from begging also should also be in a tone and a manner that is close to what Quran and Hadith are teaching us.
Right.
Yes, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was stern and harsh with certain people as well. So sunnah is both. You need to be soft where you need to be soft, and you need to be harsh where the situation demands. Sunnah is both.
Yeah.
But it should not lead to a situation where you are distancing somebody from the house of Allah.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes we don't even consider that a person may be new to Islam, and he comes in and maybe he's got a tattoo or he's got an earring or he's not appropriately dressed, right? So we have to really think it through in terms of how we address people. So it's a very good point. It's not necessarily what you say, but sometimes it's how you say it, right? But it's a combination of the both. Okay, moving forward, inshallah, if that's okay with you. Another one that might get a little bit point of contention. Number 8, can someone reserve a spot in the masjid?
Actually, this is more focused towards the first saf and the end parts of the sufuf, where people have their special places.
Yeah.
So in one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has refrained us from setting a place in a masjid to perform our salah. That this particular place is where I will be performing salah.
Right.
So somebody shouldn't have that in mind. But if he finds place there, then well and good. If not, then he should not move somebody from there. So that is the first part. You should not set a place for yourself, that this is the place where I'll be I will be performing salah. Yes, if you are performing salah on a chair and you come to the masjid, you find that the last spot has been taken by somebody and the second saf hasn't started yet and there is still place in the first saf, then you can politely request the person so that you can place your chair in the corner of the first saf.
Right.
That's a different situation. So that is one way of reserving your place, that this is my place.
Right.
Not by telling anybody anything, no, but in your heart you know that this is your place. That shouldn't be done as well.
Right.
Well, if there is a special place like behind the Imam and those places, then obviously you can try for it to the best of your ability to get those places.
Right.
But not forgetting the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says that لِيَلِنِي مِنْكُمْ أُولُو الْأَحْلَامِ وَالنُّهَى, that those that perform their salah close to me should be those that have the knowledge and wisdom of salah.
Right.
In case I have a certain error and mistake in my salah, they are able to rectify it. If I have to move out from the musalla for any particular reason that my wuzu has broken, then they are in a position to take over the leadership role of an imam on the musalla.
Right.
So that also should be taken into consideration.
Good point.
And then now, with regards to what is common in our masajid, that we have people who have set places, that on the right of the muazzin, this is his place, on the left of the muazzin, this is the other person's place. So with regards to that as well, this is something that nobody has any entitlement to.
Right.
If you come to the masjid and you regularly perform your salah in that spot, but on a particular day you find somebody else performing salah there, then quietly take another spot and sit there. There is no entitlement to it. Yes, if that man, knowing that this is where you regularly perform your salah, he moves out and tells him you can sit here, then too, he has been there first. It's his right to that particular spot on that particular day during that particular salah. Tell him, no, it's fine, you can perform your salah there. If he insists on giving you that spot, then you can take it.
Right.
Like when senior ulama come to our masajid, you find them in the second saf. Many times we move back and give them that spot.
Right.
You have the right to it. Some of our ulama will refuse to move forward.
Right.
But others will move forward.
Right.
Due to the respect that you've given them. So that is fine. But you cannot move somebody from there. Yes, if you have come there, now you need to move away for a little while to go and make wudu, to visit the bathroom, to pick a copy of the Quran or any other kitab. You leave a towel there, you leave a chair there, you leave something in your place, you leave your watch there. That is fine. But you cannot ask somebody else to reserve a spot for you. Say you will be going later on, your brother is going earlier, you tell him, reserve a spot for me. Right. That's what generally happens in Ramadan in our masajid. Yeah. Especially for Taraweeh and Isha Salah. Right. Maghrib Salah, you will send somebody, go and reserve a spot for me. So he will take 3 desks and put them. He will use one, and the other 2, when the others will come, they will be using. This is against the etiquette of the masjid. This is something that is disliked. Right. And obviously, if you've taken the spot of somebody who came earlier before you and he found that desk in place and you hadn't come, then you have taken his right to that particular place. So you will be sinful for that as well. Subhanallah. And one other scenario is where you send somebody to the masjid. Say you send your son, go and sit in the first saf. When I come there, I will sit there, then you can look for another place. That particular situation is permissible. Okay. Because now you haven't taken anybody's place. He's given up his spot for you, basically.
Right. So in summary, is it fair to say a combination of first come, first serve, right?
Correct.
And the back of the imam, those positions should be for those who are most knowledgeable.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
That is the ideal situation.
Ideal situation, if it can apply.
Yes.
Right. Okay, 2 more. Number 9, you spoke of the chair. Now, an individual who sits on the chair, I've seen some people who stand and then sit for ruku and sajda, but while standing, they're not part of the actual saf because they're ahead of everybody. Or their option is to move the chair back, which is in the other safs, so nobody can make sajda there. So what is the correct etiquette for...
With regards to sitting on a chair, we don't find much discussion in our contemporary, in our traditional kitabs and books.
Right.
Even in our contemporary fatawa kitabs, there's little discussion on it.
Okay.
Actually, why it would be such that there is no much discussion in our traditional kitabs, is that the way we see people using chairs nowadays never used to happen in the past.
Right.
Nowadays, what happens is somebody feels a bit of pain here, a pain there, a bit of pain there. Then he will grab a chair to be comfortable and sit on it.
Right.
The actual mas'ala is, in a farz and wajib salah, if somebody is able to stand even with difficulty and perform his salah, and he chooses to sit and perform his salah will not be valid. Because he is leaving out a rukn of salah.
Qiyam. Right.
Without a valid excuse. A little pain will not be considered as something that is acceptable for you to grab a chair and sit on it. Sahaba used to go through so much of pain, but they would never miss out their salah in the actual position and manner that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught them. So if you have to look at our masajid, many of our chairmen, as we like to call them, will not qualify to sit on a chair and perform their salah.
Right.
Because many of them will be able to sit on the floor as well. So if you are not able to stand, then the next step is to try and sit on the floor.
Right.
Even if your legs are facing the qibla.
Right.
So that's why you would find that the custom, the tradition of chairs, even in homes, in the olden days was not as much.
Right.
So the masajid were far from the chairs. So either you would stand or you would sit on the floor and perform your salah. So if you're sitting on the floor, technically you're sitting with your shoulders in line with the shoulders of those that are standing.
Okay.
Your back is in line with the backs of those that are standing. Your legs, your feet might be further ahead of them.
Right.
So that's one point of consideration.
Right.
Now, amongst contemporary muftis, you will find a bit of difference of opinion whether the front legs of the chair are supposed to be on the line or whether the back legs are supposed to be on the line. So if the back legs are on the line, then we have the person sitting on the chair with his back and shoulders in line with the rest of the saf.
Right.
If you have the front legs, then you have the feet in line with the feet of the rest of the saf, but the shoulders and the back will be
further back. Right.
Our understanding from our Darul Iftah is that the back legs should be in line with the line, so that your shoulder and your back is in line with the rest of the musallis.
Okay.
In the other situation where you have the front legs in line with the rest of the saf, then you are obstructing whoever is going to perform salah behind the chair as well.
Right, correct, yeah.
So that saf will not be complete.
Right.
There will be an obstruction in it. So that is one point that we need to note, where a chair will be. Now, there is a bit of difference of opinion as well on whether a chair needs to be in the front, in the end of the row, or it can be in the middle of the row as well. So I haven't verified, but I heard from one of the students of one of South Africa's senior muftis here, from a different Darul Iftah than we studied in. He was of the opinion, or he is still of the opinion, that the front legs of the chair should be in line with the saf, and the chair should not be anywhere in between the musallis, because this will break the sequence. So this shows now that since the back and the shoulders are away, it's breaking the saf in between. So he was always of the opinion that it should be on one side. But having the chair in between, if your back legs of the chair are in line with the saf, then I feel it will not break the sequence and the continuity of the row of the saf.
Right.
So you could have a chair in between, and you could have the chairs in the end as well.
So then the individual would have to stay seated though.
He has to remain seated.
Yeah.
That is another mas'ala now that I'm coming to.
Oh, okay.
There is a difference of opinion.
Okay.
With regards to whether the person should stand if he's able to stand, and then sit later on for other arkan as well or not.
Right.
So going back to our traditional fiqh kitabs, the default position of the Hanafi madhab is that if a person is not able to make sajda on the ground, if he's making sajda through gestures or bowing, bending, then in that situation, qiyam is not necessary on him.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Some of our later scholars and some of our senior muftis around the world nowadays as well hold the opinion that if a person is able to stand, he should stand and then sit down later on.
Okay.
We go with the first opinion that if sajda on the ground is not possible for that individual, then he should not stand for qiyam. He should start his salah whilst sitting either on the ground or on the chair.
Okay.
Whichever he qualifies for.
Okay.
So in that situation, there's no question about whether a chair can be in the center or not.
Right.
But with regards to the other opinion that some of our local muftis as well, some of our muftiyan in India, Pakistan hold as well, where a person should stand for as long as he can stand and then sit down, there now the sequence of the saf is breaking. So now in that situation, it is ideal to have the chairs on the far end of the saf.
Right. Okay. And there's a lot more detail in this. This is just a summarization of some basic etiquettes, but people can always reference their local mufti, or even better, their local Darul Iftah to get some clarification. A question I haven't had is not here, but it popped in my head for number 10 is when you were talking about arkan of salah. I saw something the other day. It was really heartbreaking. There was an elderly gentleman, and I was walking out, and he was reading salah, but his lips were completely sealed. So some clarification in terms of arkan in salah and a person who reads salah in their mind.
Well, it's the same for reciting the Quran outside salah or anything else.
Yeah.
Tilawah basically refers to reciting, and that would involve moving of the lips and the tongue in accordance with the makharij, the pronunciation of the letters and where they are pronounced from. So if somebody is just mentally running a surah through his mind, then his qira'ah hasn't taken place, which is also a rukn and a fundamental action of salah.
Right.
So salah is not valid.
Yes, so that's a very important one that, because sometimes when we read, in our English books, we tend to read in our minds, and then I think it unknowingly transfers over. But as you said, the salah will absolutely not be counted.
Correct.
So very important points. Mufti Sahab, jazakallah khairan for taking the time to speak to us about common mistakes in salah. Inshallah, I hope you can join us. Our next session will be on Ramadan coming up, and we will do some questions and address some questions with that. So jazakallah khairan, appreciate that.
Ameen wa iyyakum.
Barakallah feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa
Wa
barakatuh.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.